Hello, everybody. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, good night, wherever you are in the world, listening or watching to this. I'm currently in Cape Town. I've been spending a bunch of time with family, and I wanted to talk about NPD and the effects on people around the people that have NPD. So I've been traveling with my family throughout South Africa. And one of the things we did is we stopped in the little town where my grandparents lived for many years, and where my grandfather died in 1980 and my grandmother died in 1999. And so my mother and my cousin went to the graveyard, which I have not been to since probably 1986, maybe. I visited their grave a few times. Now, I have beautiful memories of my grandmother and my grandfather. My grandfather was a really important man in my life. And I sat there with my cousin and my mom, and I lay on the gravestones. Maybe you're not supposed to, but I did. And really just started to think back and absorb all the gifts that I got from my grandparents, which were amazing. And I was thinking back to as I spent time with my family and looking at the effects, both negative and positive and negative, of what gets passed down the lineage. Now, I got a lot of amazing things from my grandparents. But as I was looking at my family, and I have some members of my family that have various pathologies from mild to extreme. And I was looking at the effect on all the kids, on my cousins, on various people in the family, nieces and nephews. And I began to think about yes, there's a lot of positive stuff, but also like the negative stuff. And it got me thinking about, like, if you have a narcissist in the family, somebody who's potentially malignant, the effect on the family is profound. The effect on the children is profound, on, the various nieces and nephews. And so it got me thinking about the way NPD is looked at. Like, if you look at the DSM-5, which is more of a diagnostic, I don't know, one of the two. Diagnostic tool, maybe, I don't know. My English has become terrible because I've been speaking Afrikaans here. It looks more at diagnosing a specific pathology, and I think the ICD-10 is not that different. But what it doesn't seem to do very much is talk about the effect on the pathology on the people around the individual who has this quote-unquote disease. And you guys have probably heard people talk about, well, the people that have the disease are doing fine. They are and they're not, but it's the people around them that are so deeply affected. By the way, if you're on YouTube, you can see the exposure going up and down. It is a crazy day in Cape Town right now. It's like sunny one second and then like blisteringly cold the next, and like dark, and it's insane. But that's Cape Town weather. And so the metaphor I started to look at was radiation. Radiation, you don't feel necessarily immediately. It's extremely toxic to the human body. And over time, you start to experience the effects of having been irradiated. Is it radiated or irradiated? Apparently my English is fucked at the moment. And I realized that when you're around a toxic individual, when you're around somebody that has NPD, especially the more malignant kind, maybe it doesn't show up at first, but the effect is so profound. And I think that traditional psychology has been spending a lot of time looking at the actual substance that is radioactive. And sure, that's useful and that's important, but a little less, stay with me with the metaphor, a little less on the effect of the radioactive substance on human beings. So that's traditional psychology, old school. I think a lot of people now are beginning to realize, okay, that's fine. We can diagnose these people with NPD. But the real problem is like what happens to the people around them. And I was looking at it because as I was looking at my family and my friends and seeing certain patterns, like, I have a friend who has a very narcissistically psychopathic parent. And so they're so focused on trying not to be that way that they have suppressed their entire life force. Any sign of being big and bold and brave feels in their body kind of toxic to them, so they pull back. I have a family member who's terrified of social media because they think that if they're on social media in any way, it'll be boastful. And the last thing they want to do is be boastful. Now, they were broken down over many, many decades by their parent, who was very overbearing and criticized them a lot and controlled them a lot. And now they are, and actually they have been for a long time, afraid to truly express their true essence and be their full self and like come out of their shell because it feels boastful. And I was thinking about, I didn't have this conversation with them, but I sat there listening and I was thinking to myself, they've suppressed everything about themselves, their natural tendencies, because of this program that occurred in their life, because of the way that they were suppressed and the way they became afraid of expressing their true self. So, I look at, as I said, many different family members and friends who have put the brakes on their life and suppressed themselves because maybe they had a parent that kept on suppressing them. Whenever they were themselves, the parent would suppress them. And I just felt that the deep sadness of what this has caused in their life, like people that maybe never went for the dreams they wanted to. And they maybe still think about it, but sometimes I have one person I know who even thinking about a dream feels toxic, so they don't want to do it because it feels like on some level in their body they're going to get punished for having that dream, which is too big. And it's funny being back in South Africa because, on a slightly different note, I one of the reasons I left is because I was a big dreamer, and I found in the film industry, being young, I was constantly suppressed. But I guess what happened with me is I developed that's what I think of you. Those of you on YouTube, you saw my middle finger. I'm trying to swear less because some people do get offended. I don't know if I'm going to be able to last, though. I'm probably going to go back to swearing full time. But I was suppressed so much. And so what I did is I said, well, you know what? Screw you all. I'm leaving. I'm going to go somewhere where my talent can be appreciated. I had a lot of arrogance that helped me along because I'm tired of this kind of suppression. And that's the way I went. Now, other people in that situation may have gone a different way. And I keep on thinking about this, the family dynamics that occur. And that's why this radiation thing becomes so interesting to me, because narcissistic abuse is like radiation poisoning. As I said, at first, maybe you don't see it so much. But as the years go by, and I know radiation kills you faster, but as the years go by, the effects become far more pronounced. My English is shot being in this country. Far more pronounced because the person maybe has held themselves back. There's certain things they haven't gone for. There are certain issues they might have, certain fears they might have, of being afraid of being too big for their britches, kind of thing. And I felt this looking at a few people in my family, because I was like, oh, it's really profound, the level of radiation poisoning that occurred that has disabled people's dreams. So I think it would be really useful if, old school psychology really caught up to the idea that I don't think you can necessarily treat a radioactive substance. You could try to, but it's radioactive. I think that it's much better to figure out, how do you keep humans away from the radioactive substance, or how do you protect them from the radioactive substance? And how do you help them see what the radioactive substance is doing to them and still doing to them to this day? I am always moved when I see how people have taken their circumstances and risen above them and beyond them, especially when they have toxic parents. But at the same time, I feel so saddened because, having spent time here now with family and a lot of friends, to see the effect of what happened. This happens on a societal level as well. Right now in society, a lot of people are feeling a kind of hopelessness because the people that are calling the shots are akin to people that have malignant pathologies. In fact, they do have malignant pathologies, many of them. And everybody in society is feeling so broken down right now, and it feels so hard for them to break out of this, prison, a mental, emotional prison that they feel in. Look at my English, it's gone. Ik praat niet Afrikaans op uw oomlik. For any of those in South Africa, you understand exactly what I just said. I have been speaking so much Afrikaans the last 2 weeks that, which is getting better now, but my English has gone to shit. And by the way, I could understand some Portuguese, and then we moved back to America, to Texas, and now I'm trying to pick up Spanish, and my Portuguese is like, mixed with, I'm a mess. I'm basically a mess. But anyway, this metaphor really feels profound to me because I feel like everybody's too focused on the radioactive substance and less focused on the effect of radiation. And that's why I say narcissistic abuse is like radiation poisoning. And I do hope that a lot of more traditional psychology starts to catch up with the fact that that's a bigger issue. Because for every one narcissist, maybe there's 5 to 10 in their orbit that are being affected by that. Now you think about, somebody who's leading a church, how many are they affecting? Somebody who's leading, a group, an organization, a charity, a political party, a country, an NGO that is more powerful than a country, a corporation that is more powerful than a country. When you have these malignant personalities, you find that entire populations are experiencing this kind of radiation poisoning. So, those are my thoughts for today. I have a lot more I'm going to be sharing about the whole visiting my grandparents and the burial on my other podcast, which is called Remember Your Greatness. If you want to check that out, you can look in the links below. But as always, stay curious, because I really feel curious at the moment. Talk to you soon.